TradeWinds. I am CEO Tim Whitney. With me is Miller Hoffman.
Glad to be here. There's no shortage of content so far for the first 7 or so months of this year. So I'm excited to work off of you, see what's on your mind, and of course I have a couple things to throw your way as well.
Absolutely. The big beautiful bill is going to be a really big topic, and we're going to make sure that we spend some good QT on that. I know that's been a lot of times spent on it and questions with meetings that we've had. First off, Donald Trump's second term as POTUS. The 119th Congress has come into effect. So a lot has happened in the beginning that may be setting the tone for the rest of the year, or at least 4 years here. The rise of DeepSeek out of China as an artificial intelligence. We've had the implementation of tariffs from the United States and the impact that that has had on the world. The financial markets themselves really have adjusted to that. The Standard & Poor's has gone up and down in the double digits. It's been in the negative, but if you look at them now, we're actually all-time highs.
That's right.
Right? So this has been a really interesting part to be. I think, and one thing that I'm personally excited about is the transition of the planet into Web3. I think that's a really big part that I want to talk about a little later on what we as a firm think about where the market's going to go in the rest of 2025. One more thing, and then we'll turn it over to the big beautiful bill. Nvidia has broken the $4 trillion market capitalization.
Amazing, isn't it?
It's unbelievable to see somebody hit that high.
Unbelievable is the right way to describe it. I think you're right.
Yeah, and it really lets us know that that is where we're moving with that creativity that comes out of machine learning, but it brings some concerns too that we wanted to address. Unchecked power consumption is a big concern for people. There is data storage and manipulation on a global scale that we have to just be wary of. Yet, this is really a time when we as human beings have to ask, what did we create here? Is it good? Is it bad? We'll find out. But let's turn that over to Miller Hoffman and the big, beautiful bill. Take it away. So what is this? Why did this come to pass? Tell us what this actually means for us.
I think maybe the best way to start is with a brief history lesson, right? During Trump's first term, really in 2017, with a lot of the changes actually going into place in 2018, Trump passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, oftentimes abbreviated as the TCJA. That is really what the rule of the land or law of the land has been for quite some time, really since 2018 up to this point. An important provision in that bill was the sunset that was scheduled to occur towards the end of this year, 2025, without something being done. An important part of Trump's victory later last year was the expectation that there was going to be something done to what the existing tax code and laws and regulations is to look like. So welcome to July 4th, and now, of course, a couple weeks after, the one big beautiful bill, as it's commonly called, and certainly it's Trump's favorite way of describing the bill, was passed July 4th, Independence Day. As a result, the industry, both finance and tax, is still digesting quite a bit of it. Tim, it's about 1,000 pages. So as much as the updates are true and important that I'll provide to you this morning, the truth is a lot of analysts and people a heck of a lot smarter than me are still reading through. We're actually the jury is still out in terms of what this exactly will look like, which isn't really a whole lot different than any major piece of legislation.
Yeah, let me just jump in here. So it's 1,000 pages. There's a ton of things to read through. There's a temperature about it. We don't want to get political per se, but how has this hit the average citizen as far as not just what's coming as far as a change in code or a change in law? What is the feeling of this big, beautiful bill?
I heard a saying that I think encapsulates really well what my personal opinion is. The noise is loudest the closer you sit to the speaker. In this case, the headlines are just, it's a barrage of headlines that are just never ceasing, it feels like. And this bill is no different. Depending on which side of the aisle, which you find your preferences, and although that is very confusing and another part of some of the mystery around this year, we've seen quite a bit of political activity. That's, I don't think, a huge surprise. But to answer your question directly, I think a lot of the headlines are really wrapped up in some of the key provisions of the bill, which Trump has been campaigning on really for the better part of a year or so, a rolling year. we have seen and really anticipated these changes coming, but exactly the format in which they have been presented to us, certainly a lot of question marks as to what that looks like. So I think the average citizen, to circle back, will not see a material change as a result of the one big beautiful bill, especially from a tax perspective. I'll get to in a second where this positions us from a country perspective, what this adds to our debt, and I think some of the further stressors out there. But I think rest assured, we're not going to see a massive change in what your filing will look like this year, or really 2026, when a lot of the changes go into effect.
Okay. So you mentioned debt and the effect that that would have for the United States. Go ahead and lean into that.
Yeah, so from a country perspective, somewhat elementary, but the more that we look to cut from a tax revenue perspective, the less we have an ability to pay our bills or pay the debt and the other obligations we owe other countries.
Right.
With further tax cuts without commensurate cuts in spending, which has not happened despite some of the efforts of Doge and some of the other movements out there, we are finding ourselves in more and more debt. Conservatively, the CBO estimates about $3.5 trillion being added to our nation's debt somewhat quickly with the passage of this bill, but more independent agencies put that right around $4.5 trillion.
Okay.
So we're talking about large numbers here to an already overwhelming figure with our national debt sitting right around 36 trillion right now. So we're in the ballpark of 40 here relatively soon once a lot of the provisions come true in the bill.
And just for anybody watching this, isn't the majority of the debt run and owned by the United States and the U.S. citizen, right? I think there's often a misnomer that it's owned by foreign countries, and that's not necessarily true. Yes, we have some countries that own a lot of U.S. debt, but mostly it is owed to the U.S. citizen programs. Correct?
That's true. Yeah, you think about programs like Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid, certainly defense spending, and now the interest on our debt is really one of the core components, unfortunately, which makes this situation precarious, to say the least.
$1 trillion potentially this year alone, just for interest.
Which is really scary. Similar to how wealth has an uncanny ability to compound and grow over time, debt's the same way, just in the negative sense. We're paying more and more interest as that number or the amount that we've borrowed is getting larger and larger. So it's definitely a concern of mine from my professional opinion perspective.
So that's a good point. As an advisor, what do you think you're going to have to focus on, or do you think clients will need some guidance on here? What should we be looking out for, and what should similarly clients be looking out for?
I think an important element will be parsing what is not changing versus what shifts or shimmies we're seeing along the way. The truth of the matter, Tim, is that a lot of these provisions are not brand new, and that the average American has actually been accustomed to over the past really 8 or so years, 6 to 8 or so years. Really, your ordinary income, taxable income brackets are not changing. That's a pretty important one for the average American. In fact, we're to use a caricature just to reflect the average person here. While there are some shifts with standard deductions, which we'll dive into in a bit, and more notable changes to itemized deductions, overall, I'm not anticipating there being a massive change. We're still going to be at historically low tax rates, which open up quite a bit of tax planning opportunities, both for those who find themselves on the more higher income side, but also those who are in the more average or maybe even low income, as a lot of our retirees are.
You make some really good points, Miller. Is there anything else top of mind here that we should know about for this bill?
Yeah, 2 more things to end on. One, and may go without saying, the headlines may not be a good reflection of your actual tax position, right? There are numerous changes in the bill that may have little to absolutely no impact on you at all. To try to combat that, or to try to give you a bit of a head start in terms of the things that may impact you, I have a neat little one-pager I'm going to send out so that you can take a look at, those who are watching can take a look at to see if any of these resonate well with you and where you think you will be positioned now moving forward. So along with us being a trusted resource for you, we'll be glad to talk about some of the main changes in the bill, and we actually use some really neat software to try to project out what do we actually see these impacts looking like. when it comes to dollars and cents. That's
Love that.
slightly important for us to be aware of those things.
Love that. That's right. You know, I'm a big proponent of software, and if there's something good in the tax world, we'll take a look at it and use it. If it's in your best benefit or in our best benefit, certainly TradeWinds will make sure to implement that. I think that's a good closing on the bill. I think we still have a lot to see and learn coming down.
Sure.
Mr. Hoffman will obviously keep us informed here, along with any other advisor over here at the firm. A quick update, TradeWinds will be hosting a fraud event at the third quarter here, October 1st. When we have the new world where we were talking about Web3 and artificial intelligence, it creates new criminals and new abilities for fraudulent activity. We'll be hosting this along with Dogwood Bank, so we'll get it from a bank perspective and what they are using in their software. We have the Scarlet Group, which is our IT provider. They get to look at this from a universal protection of your data, of our data. And then we have a fraud expert that will be joining us as well. We're very excited to have it. So we'll send out some more information on this fraud event. Please, please, please be there. I think there's a lot to gather from that. I also want to talk, and I want to throw it over to you about the global rise of cryptocurrency. I don't expect you to know what the cryptocurrency actually is, but that has really shifted when we're talking international payments, trans payments across the borders, across the pond. Do you find that people are discussing it more, that you have the companies like JP Morgan or even Walmart discussing these stable coins? How do you think those are going to impact us?
I think it's too large at this point to simply ignore, right? And I've been proud of you and some of the thought leadership here on the TradeWinds side to recognize that this isn't a brand new topic for us. We've broached it in so many webinars or other correspondence that we have with both our advisors and our clients. From a perspective of what this actually looks like from a day-to-day usage, I think we'll continue to see more use cases. What does this actually look like, again, for the average American? We've talked about that caricature quite a bit so far,
right?
Today and certainly beyond. Maybe a better question is to ask you, your opinion. What are you seeing, especially towards the tail end of this year and beyond, as you mentioned, larger, huge companies like the JP Morgans of the world definitely getting interested and involved with this.
Sure, and even the introduction of Coinbase to the S&P 500. But I think what we want to do is not put so much pressure on cryptocurrencies. We want to make this just a natural question like, what is your 401k balance? What is your cash balance? What are your cryptocurrency holdings if you have these? What is your debt load on your home? Your mortgage interest rate? This has just become, you're right, Miller, this has become more of a socially acceptable and adaptable thing. So, as far as the outlook for the second half of the year, I think we want to make sure not to make any wild assumptions. We don't know what's going to happen, either with warring or new bills coming down. So we want to make sure not to say be conservative or be aggressive. What that does mean is take a temperature check, right? How do you feel about this? What can you do to take advantage of some things that are coming and happening in the market? What is making you lose sleep at night, right? Come in here and have those questions and we can adjust accordingly.
And that's what we're here to help with as well, not just when things are sunshine and rainbows, but when we may be feeling like there's dark clouds on the horizon, which feels like we've been in that world for years now.
Right.
Really post-COVID, and uncertainty seems to be the favorite word that analysts and economists are using these days, and I don't see that changing much moving forward, but perhaps that's some speculation on my part as well.
I think that's good. People want to hear that speculation. So this is our first shot at an open forum mid-market outlook. We think we'd like to continue to change these things up for you to make them interesting. Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions or comments, be on the lookout here for the one-pager that Miller has provided for us. Otherwise, best of luck. Take care.